Community events are something we hold near and dear in rural Wisconsin, whether it's your small town's summer festival, a dairy breakfast, or a county fair. But those events can't happen without people willing to give up their time, money, or energy to volunteer. I'm Stephanie Hoff from the southern end of the world's longest barn in Madison. This morning, we're talking about the best way to recruit and retain good volunteers for your organization. Ian Hill is the CEO of The Changing Point. He's working with 500 fair boards across the country, including here in Wisconsin, to help them build their volunteer teams. He tells us how it's done.
Well, the first step in that is realizing that the nature of volunteerism has changed. In the past, volunteerism was obligatory. We knew we had to be involved because we all had a responsibility to help with the community. Now, to be honest with you, I can't tell you exactly when it happened, but there was a shift. And that shift was this: prove to me that your thing is worth my time, talent, and treasure of volunteerism. So we went from everyone understanding civic responsibility and an obligation to help to prove to me. Well, that presents a whole different level of challenges for volunteer organizations. I now have to prove my value and that I can provide an exceptional experience for the volunteer.
It's a lot more than just asking someone to come do something for a few hours. You're almost having to market the opportunity to them. And that, I'm sure, can be challenging for some groups to wrap their head around.
Well, it's two things. One, we're frustrated by that, especially people who live in small towns. And especially people of my generation. I'm 59 years old. So we look at it and go, well, wait a minute, don't you realize you need to help? How are we going to build this town if you don't help? And a younger person may say, well, sure, I'm happy to help, but what am I going to experience? And how do I know it's being run properly? And how do I know my money's being spent well? And how do I know my time is actually going to make an impact? So all of a sudden, we have to be able to explain the value of what we're doing. We got to be able to articulate the kind of experience that they can hope to have. And then we got to deliver. We got to deliver that they're going to have a positive volunteer experience. Once we do prove that, they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. People are desperately looking for community. And so I think that's our biggest message. You want people to come volunteer? Make sure your community is healthy, meaning your organization is healthy. Make sure that it's well run. Make sure that people are being treated with dignity and respect and that they feel valued.
So let's talk about evaluating your organization and make sure that it's a place people want to volunteer. How do you go about a self-audit? What's that first step?
So first, I call it a courageous conversation. All the boys and girls got to look at each other and say this: how are we doing? What is people's experience? Are we what we say we are? Or is there a gap between our principle and practice? We tell everybody they're going to get this, but do they actually get it? So I would do it two ways. I would do 100 cups of coffee. So every board member go pick out 3 people. Make sure there are 3 people of influence. And go sit down and have a cup of coffee. Do 80% listening and 20% talking. Ask open-ended questions. How are we doing? Do you think we're fulfilling our role? What would you like to see us do? How can we better serve the community? When we go and ask those courageous questions, we're going to get real answers. That will be the first indication of whether we are of value to the community. Then the second piece is simple surveys, right? We just send out a simple survey. Let people tell us, and whether it's on social media or whether that's an anonymous survey through Monkey Survey or Google Survey. There's so many tools today. But you got to do both. You got to have some face-to-face conversations with people of influence in town. That doesn't mean people of prominence. There's a lot of people of prominence that have no influence. But talk to some people that really matter in our faith community, in our elementary schools, or in our business community, our seniors. Ask them, how are we doing? And then a more traditional, put out a survey. Combine those two things, and you'll have a really good sense of whether you're of value to the community or not.
You know, another thing you said, do the systems we have in place when you're doing the self-audit, are they old? Are they antiquated? Can we be doing things in a new way to make the experience just better overall?
Yeah, systems are a funny thing, right? A system is just a bunch of parts that we put together to accomplish a specific task. Every rural organization, business or nonprofit, social profit, has systems, policies, procedures, protocols. But are those systems from a time gone by, or are they for today? And there's two kinds of systems. Systems that we design for a specific time, place, task, or systems that organically grow up. I always say it like this. I don't know. It's just what we do around here. That's a system that organically grew up. The question really is, are the systems we're using what the times require? Too often times, we have systems in place that either participants or volunteers experience, and they say this, who the hell is running this place? This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. When people are saying that about their volunteer experience, or they're saying that about the event or activity we're putting on, they're not coming back.
So that's our self-audit. All right, now it's time to promote the value that our volunteers should be getting in our organization. When it comes to marketing volunteer positions, where do you start?
I start with impact. What real value do we bring to the community? Like a fair. We're here at the fair conference, Wisconsin Association of Fairs. 77 different county fairs across the state, plus the state fair, right? What's their real value? Oh, fun. Well, wait a minute. I would suggest their real value is economic development. I would suggest their real value is building the citizen of tomorrow through the youth programs that they have, animal husbandry, 4-H, things of that nature. I would say that their real value is community connectiveness. Do you know that all studies show that when a person feels connected to community, they're less likely to be depressed? They're less likely to succumb to suicide? So all of a sudden, the local fair is about building community connectiveness, community resiliency, community pride. That's the impact. That's where I start when I start talking about marketing a volunteer experience. And whether we cast it through a face-to-face conversation or we cast it on social media, either way, we're casting the vision of the value of our organization and the impact we make. That's going to get certain people to step to us. Then we just got to make sure, as we said earlier in this conversation, they have a positive experience. When they do, they'll go tell others, and the next thing you know, we'll have plenty of volunteers.
After that work is done, we have our last step, which might be new. It's kind of a younger generation thing, whether that's a good thing or not, but the need for a pat on the back and making sure that you're celebrating the people who are putting in the work, putting in the effort.
I'm no expert in the brain, but I do know this. When we have a positive volunteer experience, there's certain chemicals that flow. Dopamine, endorphins, all the good juices that are built into our bodies to give us that feeling that we've done something of value. So celebration is critical. It could be a high five. That releases those little juices. It could be a recognition of some kind. It could be a certificate. It could be a party. It could be all kinds of things, a simple thank you. That little step of thank you, pat on the back, releases those chemicals. Those chemicals feel good to us and we want more of it. It's less about the common human decency of thanks, and it's just as much, or if not more, about a feeling that I get. And I say to myself, damn, that felt good. And I come back. And because I know this is a farm listener, or at least rural listener, I would say this, be encouraged. You know how to do this. You did it 100 years ago. You know how to build a trusting relationship with one human being. And that's really how we go and get people involved today.
Ian Hill along with us. He's the CEO of The Changing Point, and right now he's coaching up about 500 county fair boards around the country on how to recruit and retain volunteers. As we heard, it includes new tactics to get today's individual to give up their time and energy. From the southern end of the world's longest barn in Madison, I'm Stephanie Hoff.